LGBTQI. That acronym is something that we're all becoming more and more used to. In fact, we are used to it now, but only a couple of years ago we weren't. And one of those letters in there is something I didn't know about, and you probably didn't and may still not know about, which is I, and it stands for intersex. What is intersex? So intersex refers to humans who have a mixture of chromosomes, hormones, and anatomy that are not clearly defined as male or female. And you may have heard the term binary or non-binary. So binary is male and female. Therefore, intersex is one of the 30 plus variations that sits between that spectrum. So with me today is a good friend, Dr Rogena Sterling. Let's say an expert, because Regina is intersex. So who better to ask and get information about to help build understanding and awareness throughout everybody that we know about what intersex is. So with that, could I invite you to share your story and take everyone on a journey of understanding?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Regina Stirling. I was born intersex, though for the first many years of my life, I did not know that I was intersex. I knew I was different. I knew I had had some operations. I even knew the name of my operation, and in my case it was hyperspadias. But nothing could answer my questions in my inner self. Anyway, fast forwarding for many years, trying to hide all these questions within me. And after many years, eventually I did some research in the library. I was looking for some other information, and I stumbled across the word intersex. And I found that connection with my operation, and my whole life fell into place. And I understood myself as intersex, someone who is not clearly defined as male or female, having one of these 30 variations. And once I accepted that, my whole self felt so much relief. I suddenly felt, this is who I am. I must admit, society hasn't been quite so accepting yet, but it's been a big relief.
Congratulations on coming to that point in your life. Knowing who we are gives us that ultimate knowledge, confidence in that. Whether society has got there yet, we'll work on that. That's what today is about. That's what you listening to this is about. And it comes back, probably time to point back to binary, in the sense of why society isn't accepting. I think a big part of it, and obviously correct me if I'm not on the point here, but is that society has taught us to be binary. So little boys would have blue t-shirts and would play, I don't know, armies and rugby, and little girls would have pink t-shirts and play with dolls and have their tea parties. And this is where society, essentially, from the time you're a kid all the way through, like, you are taught this is how we are and this is what is acceptable. We've never been taught that intersex is part of the world we live in, and therefore it's as normal and as acceptable as male or female. Is that a nice way of rounding it off?
It is.
Yeah.
But in fact, if we look back in history, right, even 2,000 years ago, the Greeks acknowledged intersex. At that time they called us hermaphrodites, existed. And they noticed the variation forms in the sense that intersex people had more feminine or masculine forms than they thought according to their assigned sex. And so it shows even back then this was recognized. But over time we have got more cemented into these binary natures of male and female. And that's the problem we have today with this pink and blue.
Yeah, and this is actually generated from a Kiwi back in the 50s. So if you tell the story of, is it Dr. Money?
Yes. Dr. John Money grew up in New Zealand, did his masters, and then went over to the US to do his PhD in psychology. And he was the one that brought gender into this whole framework that we know of it today. His whole concept of using gender was another way to help us effectively erase intersex from our picture we have today. Prior to John Money, intersex people were considered according to their chromosomes, hormones and anatomy, and they tried to find what they called the true sex of the person. John Money was realizing, along with many scientists, that it was getting very, very difficult to understand what's true sex because hormones were varied, chromosomes had many different variations, not just XX and XY. Anatomy was also varied in differences, so it was very difficult to define according to these factors. So John Money introduced gender role and gender identity into this connection of picture, so that way they could use that to say, this is the sex we deem is best for this individual to live, either male or female. And often that required surgery to change that child to fit the sex that they were determined to live. And much of that treatment has followed on to this very day.
And along with the operation to make them fit to one of the binaries, that was then also followed with hormone treatment,
Yes.
which will be all through their life. And one of the interesting facts that I found quite gobsmacking outstanding is that the doctors would choose and would tell the parents that they weren't to tell the children. So the children were to have the hormones that made them the sex that they were chosen, the operation that fitted with it, and to live this life as that sex, and to not know, but the parents live their whole life knowing. So it's quite in this day and age, it's just wouldn't do that to people these days, I guess is the point I'm trying to get to.
Just to follow on from this, something that's quite interesting is sometimes there are associated medical issues that we have to get medical help with, but the actual assigning of sex is not one of those issues. And a big thing many intersex people around the world want people to know is we want to be who we are, and we want to be able to have decisions over what surgery is done to us that can affect us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And the more parents can understand that, the more they can help support their children and in the future. Because a healthy life and a healthy child is something that every parent wants.
And your doctorate was in human rights,
Yes.
so you've studied extensively and done a lot of work in this space, and I'm sure understand like no one else that whole picture. I think the simple view is, as you mentioned, is that person choosing who they are. And if you think back to the doctors instructing parents not to tell the kid, maybe part of that fear was if the kid did find out, then they would go, oh, well, that's why everything seems not right, and I do want to be what I am, which is not what I am at the moment. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing for people to get their head around. I myself get my head around it. We've had some pretty open discussions, and I think it's fair to say some awkward moments, as I've learned. And I think as long as the intent's a kind intent, that's going to be part of life for everybody. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
And
yeah.
Don't worry about getting everything perfect and saying the right thing in the right way. As long as your intent's in the right place, there's going to be an element of learning that we all go through. Yeah.
At the end of the day, intersex people are like anyone else. We just want to be accepted, we want to be part of society, and we want to participate in society, just like anyone else. We're talking about gender equality. Well, gender equality means accepting people who are different, and that includes people in between the binary of male and female.
Yeah. And we are all human. We're all human. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So shall we wrap up here, and let's say this is the first of a series. We will cover a range of subjects. One that we'll cover in the next one will be gender equality, the big discussion around boards and pay equity, and that's a big binary discussion, which now will be a spectrum discussion. Would that be the right way to put it?
I think it would be an interesting discussion, yes.
Yep.